So, the Oscars took place last night, and it was the indie movies that took most of the trophies home. We love to see it, with Anora taking Best Picture, and more importantly to this channel, Flow took home Best Animated Feature. The first Latvian movie to win an Oscar, and it was made entirely on Blender. I really hope I finally get to see it proper. Won an Oscar, yet it feels like no one's actually been able to see it. The industry tries to push back against criticism that the movies winning this stuff have been seen by barely anyone, yet then we have movies like this, where they've made it so difficult to even try to see. My channel's about animation, yet I've still not really had access to this now Oscar-winning movie. It's just not in cinemas anywhere in the UK, unless I went to a specific film festival in Cambridge a couple months back. Anyway, the indie darling Flow has now cemented that the big boys of animation no longer have dominance over the awards season. Productions from wider backgrounds have been cropping up in the nominations a lot more in recent years. And now, I kind of feel like it's anyone's fair game. We've come a long way from that very first year where the only other movie nominated outside of Shrek and Monsters Inc. was the Jimmy Neutron movie. That clip of all of them at the Oscars is still just core nostalgia. I wonder if Ugly Shrek will make an appearance when his time comes. If it does, I kinda doubt it's even getting nominated. Wouldn't it be hilarious if all these massive 2026 animated sequels come out and none of them were nominated? I don't think we're quite that far gone, but you never know. Sure, let's make it happen anyway. Just having Ice Age 6 and a couple indie movies in there just to rub salt into the wound. But this leaves us with another interesting truth. No Disney-produced movie has actually won this thing since 2021. The before times, before Will Smith's hand ever touched Chris Rock's face. That's the metric we use now. And if you're wondering why that's a big deal, well, that is because the 2010s were pretty much exclusively Disney wins. Between 2011 and 2022, Spider-Verse was the only exception, and even then, Spider-Man is technically still a Disney licensed character. Whether Disney Animation or Pixar, they had a stronghold over the little gold man, which led many to believe that Disney had reclaimed the monopoly over animation that it had once enjoyed pre-2000s through the award season. And initially, this seemed kinda natural. Pixar was the GOAT of the 2000s, so of course they won bloody well absolutely everything. Surprise, surprise, that streak ended with Cars 2, which saw Rango instead being the winner that year. But then, as we got into the 2010s, it seemed like Disney were winning every single year, regardless of if they actually deserved it. We're now 10 years on from when the crowd favorite Lego Movie wasn't even nominated, whilst the Oscars went to Big Hero 6. Remember, the 2010s was just a decade where it felt like Disney ruled the world. Between their own juggernauts like Frozen, Pixar's divisive sequel phase, as well as their acquisitions of Marvel and Star Wars, no individual studio had ever pulled in that level of moolah within one decade. And that dominance made it feel like the awarding bodies needed to appease the mighty mouse in some capacity. And what better category to do that than what Disney is still synonymous with? Animation. Say what you want about it, whilst he also monopolized the market, Walt Disney made the animation industry what it is today. And whilst they are now this massive corporation that does 600 other things, that is what people still think of when they hear that name. So of course, you've got the most successful studio in the room and a bunch of Academy voters who wants the employment from them. They're picking up the gold in the place that feels the most usual. However, all the while that this was happening, movies like Flow were being completely sidelined and overlooked. Unless you were Studio Ghibli, it felt as though none of the other studios could seriously compete to win, let alone a tiny budgeted movie from Latvia. Even Aardman saw no golds in the 2010s, despite big technical achievements like Pirates Band of Misfits. A record that remains the same today, sadly, but hey, at least Wallace and Gromit will always be rigged to win the BAFTA when they decide to show up. They're kind of the Disney of the UK in that sense. And I mean, to be fair, over 21 million British people watched that movie over Christmas. Hey there, you can make it into the halfway mark of this video. Come subscribe since you're interested so far along. We'll keep up with animated movie news as we go, so stick around. Back to the second half of Oscars 2025. But anyway, it just felt like the who will get nominated besides Disney award. We thought we'd see that change as Spider-Verse rightfully got it in 2018, inciting all other studios to copy its art style. However, then we were right back to the Disney or Pixar paradigm. And yet, not anymore. In 2022, Pinocchio took home the bacon. Of course, we're talking about the Netflix one from Guillermo del Toro, being a stop-motion epic which was a lot more of a mature movie than the supposed kids category. And whilst that was still from Big Money Bags Netflix, it did suggest the winds of change were afoot. Not only were there higher quality projects coming from other studios, but also, we all saw Disney had a bit of a slump going into the 2020s. I feel like I don't really need to fully recount the actual train wreck that was the Bob Chapek era. Gotta love how his name literally sounds like paycheck. But this guy, long story short, was even on record saying that animation was essentially no longer his priority as their main thing, as it was for kids. A long stretch from the child in all of us mentality of the guy who started the company. Anyway, between dumping Pixar onto streaming and overstretching the various animation workforces to corporate mandates in a way that still haunt the infrastructure to this day, unsurprisingly, the movies popping out the other side weren't doing as well. Which isn't necessarily the case anymore, with last year's Inside Out being a massive critical and financial W for them. Well, for Pixar, anyway. Moana 2 did make a ton of money, but well and good on anything else. And then there's also the other factor that these were both sequels after a period of Disney underperforming originals. So I'm not sure they would have really learned the right lessons from it. But anyway, even though I could have seen Inside Out 2 being a potential winner, I hope the lesson from Flow winning is that the standard is now higher, and you can't just secure wins from being the biggest name in town anymore. Merit counts, which is something I think Disney does have an understanding of somewhere. I just don't think it's coming across in its choices this decade. Clearly, there are loads of talented people within this giant conglomerate, but the actual executives making the decisions on the top, they seem to be a little bit woozy on the idea. And you know, with all those sweet sequels they've got slated up to 2028, I think that's only really set to continue. Anyway, big congratulations to Flo. I really hope I do get to see you eventually. And I also hope that it winning means that the conversation in animation is just going to become more diverse and interesting. Because at the end of the day, all things movie, and especially animation, is so very much just art. And to see an award ceremony actually highlighting the highest quality of art rather than just who it's made by, to me sounds like a massive step in the right direction. And being merit first only means more competition, more rivalry, more innovation, and better stuff for us to see at the end of the day, even if it is only just for kids. The world seems to be kind of anti-diverse and interesting at the moment, so maybe our little circle of animation can keep flying the flag. And the international animation scene is an incredible pool of so many art forms, so hopefully we won't be losing that anytime soon. For now though, I'm gonna end it off there. Those are my thoughts on the 2025 Oscars. For now, my name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do tell me your thoughts on the events and how you feel about the movie winners, and I shall see you all in a little bit.